lot to go over today. Man, big market bounce today. Geez, we just hit another high. Basically looks like government shutdown is over. I mean, still some particulars to be worked out, but we kind of got that news last night. Those of you on the Sunday night live stream, remember, every Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, live on YouTube. Definitely check those out. So Move had news instantly, insta-gap from 4, all the way to 12 plus, was all over the place, and then basically sold all the way back off. So anyone that jumped in initially would have been ugly. Okay, would have been ugly. I mean, I guess if you were in and out in a matter of seconds, you could have done well. But listen, when it comes to new traders, lots of times you get a deer in the headlights type reaction. That's why I love the RCT, because it forces you to wait. And in the instance of Move, the retest was, 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes later. When it had that top of that first red 5-minute candle was 12:33. Now this is the RCT algo, maps it all out for you, makes it really easy. So that entry was hit 12:33, and I mean in pre thing went to 19. Now the cool thing is maybe you weren't up then, maybe you're West Coast time. I got a backup for you. The beautiful thing is after 7 to 9 a.m. is over and the RCT algo, the pre-market algo as it's called, is kind of done its work for the day. Well done, pre-market algo, you crushed it. Then Oracle takes over. So Oracle had a $15 entry signal on this guy, and stock went to 20 plus. So 2 killer entries back to back, crazy volatile stock, bunch of halts after the market opened. Now this is the other great thing about trading these types of micro float stocks in pre-market. You don't have to deal with all that hassle of volatility halts. Now again, was still great during the day, but you can see all these halts, halting up, halting down. You got to sit there and wait for it to unhalt. It can really induce a lot of panic. So it was a solid Oracle signal at that 15 break. Like I said, went to 21 plus. But when it comes to these, 600,000 float stocks, man, it's I never want to say easy, but it's easier in pre because you don't have all that halting nonsense that jacks up all of the price momentum. Now, my number one alert this morning was BNAI right after the market opened, 9:33 a.m. Soon as the Oracle signal dropped, BNAI, nice base, headed towards the signal at 61. We had a very smart stop at basically the support level at 54, and then a target of 80 cents. So BNAI hit that about a minute later, would have been fast, hit 61 and went all the way past the target price of 80 cents for about a 40% move. Now, one thing I do want to point out is that bright green line. Now, the reason that was the price target is that bright green line is what's called the major resistance level. Now, think about the name of that line, major resistance level. That's based on technicals laid out by the Oracle algorithm. But if it's a major resistance level, it's why we love to use that as sell points. So 80, just over 80 cents, 80 and a half cents. There's a very specific reason I set that price target at 80 cents because we see a lot of these rejects at that major resistance level. So very smart to take profits if it can't break through that. Now, the way we use that from a long bias, and I will talk short bias here in a second too, is if it can base above the major resistance level, then that bright green line will shift up to the next level. Then what we do is we use that level to decide how long to stay in the trade. Because if it can push above that, we stay confident that it's now flipped the major resistance level and hold for the next resistance level. If it falls back below, well, that means take small profits and move on. Now, a kind of off-label use that I'd like to talk about that a lot of people trade is actually shorting into that major resistance level. Now, Oracle doesn't give a signal there. This is kind of, like I said, an off-label type use. But if you're well versed in technical analysis, think about it. When we go long, we like to buy on support bounces. Okay, great strategy. If you get a dip buy, stock dips to support, great place to buy, and then you risk a fail of support. Now think about shorting that major resistance level. It's the exact same thing. Instead of buying off of support, you're shorting into a resistance fail. So it's just a great example of a way that you can trade these volatile stocks both ways. You buy that 61-cent entry that I sent out, goes right up into resistance. You could sell, and if you're really aggressive, this would be kind of advanced. You could re-enter short at that point, and stocks all the way back down to the initial entry from this morning. So great way to trade these stocks two ways, solid. So SELX, another good entry this morning from the Oracle algorithm at 91 cents. Actually, let me show you that right there. Didn't hit this till post 9:45. So a great trade for new traders. Hit right there at 91, went to 125. And then Vero wasn't bad. IPHA, IMTE, GLTO, GREE, actually GREE, still grinding along. So here's an example of a stock that yet again hit the entry and a little bit slower march, kind of basing here right at VWAP. So as long as this can stay up above VWAP, this could be a solid afternoon mover or even potentially overnight play. This one was on the weekend watch list after that big gap up on Friday. We talked about it as a morning fader and then a very solid entry signal this morning and just kind of a slower moving stock. So I do want to talk a little bit more big picture stuff. Palantir. So hopefully some of you guys watched my appearance on Schwab TV on Friday. I was live at about 11:15 a.m., which would be right about there on my crosshairs when Palantir, speaking of support and resistance, was really kind of basing at that 170 do or die point. And actually, let me grab my notes from Friday. And I sent these over to Schwab at 7 in the morning. They wanted kind of my 3 top ideas. And I said, hey, major test, this is at 7 in the morning, 4 hours before I was live. Major test at 170. If it can hold that level, we could get a very similar squeeze to like back in August when Citron shorted it. 170 will be the do or die level for Burry's short. So I'm sure a lot of you guys know Michael Burry from the Big Short is now he's totally wadded up in this trade, twisted up. Like now if you watch my Schwab TV appearance, he'll be right eventually. I mean, listen, Palantir's up like thousands of %. But I think he's early. And you see how that do or die level of 170 was basically the dead bottom. 168.91. And then as I'm live, goes back above 170, ground up into the 180s in after hours. And here we are as of about 15 minutes ago, 194.92, basically 195. That's $25 a share of upside if you recognized support resistance and the fundamental thesis that Michael Burry is early. Now, the thing with being a billionaire like he is, he can ride out the squeeze. But as a small retail trader, you can't ride out that squeeze. You'll get margin called. You'll get forced out of this trade. So what I tell everybody to do is simply recognize when, whether it be a chat room, a pumper, or even, listen, greatly respect Michael Burry. He's a crazy smart guy, billionaire, okay? And he will be right eventually, okay? Palantir, now I think it's going to be 6 months from now, we'll probably have a significant correction, but not right now. And if you can recognize those things, then you could see exactly what I saw on Schwab at 11:15 a.m. on Friday. And listen, if Palantir breaks 200, I mean, that's going to be, the previous highs, gets back above 200, that's when the real squeeze starts. So other stocks of interest that I want you to keep an eye on, Open. Open's back. A lot of you guys know this was one, again, I went over this one. I've been doing these Friday afternoon appearances on Schwab TV, and this was one I shared in the threes on Schwab TV back here before it squeezed back in the summer. I'm sure a lot of you guys remember that. And then also, heck of a trend back through September. And then kind of sold off, but back again today. And what I like about this one is I'm always looking for a term called confluence. I'm sure some of you have heard that term, where multiple indicators align. And as of right now, the Oracle signal on this one is 801. And then also, let me go over to the Flux algo, which is the afternoon algo. Very, very similar entry price of 794. So back to that idea of confluence, and you should use this with all your indicators. Like, the more indicators line up, especially at a very specific price level. I mean, we're talking 6 cents apart with these entries on Open. That gives you more confidence to get more aggressive. And, especially if you're a cautious trader, which is a good thing, never want you rushing into anything, look for that to give you that confidence to enter some of these, more speculative stocks like Open. And then the last one I want to go over is CSIQ. This has been a swing trade from Iris, my swing trade AI, and also keeps showing up on Flux as well. So this thing's been hitting the Flux algo day after day and just broke out again. So I want you to keep an eye on this one because, again, it's back with a new entry of 32.96 with price targets at 36 and 38 for profit taking price targets. So listen, with the market raging, just hit a new high a few minutes ago while I was recording this video. VWAP hold pattern, major resistance at 33.14. And this thing's just been on a heck of a tear day after day after day. So that being said, crazy Money Monday. Big reminders I want you guys to remember. Beyond those Sunday night YouTube lives, a lot of this stuff that we're going over now, we talked about last night. And then use your algos, use your tools. I mean, there's one of the things that's different about the market these days versus when I got started, 20 years ago. When I got started, we would go days, sometimes weeks, waiting for, an ideal play. What I call a box checker, because I use these worksheets to determine all of the criteria we look for. I mean, we go days, sometimes weeks. Now, what's different post 2016 than basically 2020 with COVID was post 2016 on steroids. And then you come into 2025, basically double, triple steroids and maybe some amphetamines and cocaine. I don't know what this market's on. I think if you give this market a toxicology test, it would fail everything. But the point is, there's so many opportunities out there, whether it be true penny stocks, the kind of $2 to $6 short squeezes, the $10 to $15 mid-range swing trades, the $30, $40, CSIQs, and even, you look at Palantir, a $200 stock with $25, $30 of range. I mean, a lot of you might be like, hey, Tim, Palantir's expensive. But again, think of the range. You don't need a ton of shares. So the biggest challenge right now, and I think for the foreseeable future, especially if the SEC changes the pattern day trader rule, okay? Like, I know I talked about, all the drugs that the market's on now. If the PDT either goes away or the cap gets lowered from 25,000 to 2,500, prepare to never sleep again, my fellow traders. But when there's so many trades, so many opportunities, so many different patterns, you need tools, okay? And I'm kind of the market leader in creating these software tools because of my technology background. I had an internet company back in the 90s. I've always been a technology guy. Basically, a lifelong technology background, 20 years of trading experience. Get the tools, whether it be the Oracle algorithm for the morning, the Flux algo for the afternoon, the Iris AI for swing trades, or the morning income algorithm for pre-market and day trades, or 2-minute trader for midday dip and reps. So definitely have your tools, use your tools, and get ready. I mean, it's, you know, I think back to these videos I was doing in the spring and the summer when it was a little bit slower, slightly slower. And I told everybody, a lot of you guys I'm sure know what I'm about to say. I said, wait till Labor Day. So when people were belly aching in late August, that it wasn't like right now. I'm like, I told them, and again, there's videos on the channel. I'm like, guys, I'm enjoying late August because I know what's coming. Because everything is lining up for arguably the busiest fall and winter, maybe ever, or at least in my 20 plus years of trading. And it's playing out exactly to a T. So that being said, have a great week, everyone, and we'll see you next time.